The US withdrawal from Afghanistan has provoked a global outcry as the world's watched helplessly while a human rights disaster unfolds before our eyes.
Here in Korea, there's been another pressing question. What does all this mean for US foreign policy in this part of the world?
After all, critics have painted the Afghanistan pullout as President Joe Biden backing down on his promise to strengthen alliances in the wake of Donald Trump's America First era. Well, we know that Biden's asked his Defense Secretary Lloyd-Austin to carry out a global posture review to evaluate and reconsider the necessity and scope of American bases abroad. While we still have to wait for the outcome, Washington's made clear that China is seen as its primary security challenge rather than threats from the Middle East, as was also confirmed by a Congressional-Research-Service report this month on renewed great power competition. And speaking from Singapore this week, US Vice President Kamala-Harris insisted her country does stand with our allies while using strong language against China, accusing the country of coercion and intimidation.
And that's something South Korea knows all about.
This country was left bearing the brunt of China's economic retaliation in recent years when America's THAAD missile defense was deployed to the Korean-Peninsula. Seoul tried to track a diplomatic course between Beijing and Washington during Trump's presidency, but now it feels like South Korea will be forced to choose, despite Harris also insisting that Washington isn't attempting to make anyone do that. Back in May, South Korean President Moon-Jae-in agreed that South Korean forces would join US forces Korea's role in America's wider Indo-Pacific strategy, and so there's naturally great interest here in what direction that will take. There's a risk South Korea could end up as, or already is, a US military platform in a dangerous confrontation with China.
It's also got people asking about the nature of the alliance with the US.
After 7 decades and counting, Seoul and Washington have been through a lot together. But in that time, we've seen North Korea's threats built up with greater force and technology. Meanwhile, China has developed its own strength, able to target enemies with economic and technological weapons rather than only relying on brute military force. And should South Korea risk facing up to that alongside the US? Is there an alternative? These are a matter of debate. But there's a case at least for building up more sovereignty, especially as America still retains wartime operational control in Korea, and Seoul relies heavily on US military power, given that among the Koreas, only the North has gone rogue with its nuclear weapon development. The Afghanistan situation may not be directly comparable to this peninsula, but it has sent out a warning to American allies on the consequences of no longer being of strategic value.